Hey boys and girls, Graham here from therecordingrevolution.com. I hope you're having a fantastic week and a wonderful Christmas season. Got a little video for you today on how you can use compression on your drum overheads to balance out your sound. So in the mix, you have a much more balanced drum overhead sound. Now, this isn't always necessary. It depends on the performance. It depends on how you mic'd up the overheads. But I have a song where I was working on where there's plenty of snare and kick drum in the overhead, and then of course you've got the close mics. But what isn't very loud or isn't loud enough in the overheads is the ride cymbal. And in the chorus, the ride is a really important part of the track. So, soloing this overhead here's the overheads by themselves in this chorus. Right, it's a very low level ride cymbal, and you lose it obviously in the mix. Take a listen now to all the drums together in the mix. Now the natural problem is that the overhead track just isn't loud enough, right? So that's just a balance issue, no problem. We can crank the volume on that as high as it'll go here, 12 dB boost above unity, and let's see if we get more ride cymbal. Okay, that was what I naturally did. I cranked the overhead, and then now the snare in the overhead sounds better. It's at a nice hot volume. You get that crack on the snare, which is nice. It complements the close mics, but the ride is still a little buried, right? Especially in the mix. So there's two things you can do to balance out your overhead track, so what you get is a much more consistent volume on all the pieces. I want the ride to be closer to volume as the snare. So I did two things, okay? First, I bring the volume back down to 0 because I'm going to increase the gain another way. I brought in a channel strip, and the only EQ I did to the overhead was on the top end, because an EQ is a great way to change the balance of a track. So in the overheads, I want that nice crisp ride cymbal. I want that to come out. So that I just found around 8K, which is very high. I did a 6 dB shelf boost. So it goes up at 8K and everything above it is just up. And so what that does is give me more clarity, right? Let's listen to just the overhead. What I'm going to do is unbypass the whole channel strip, but I'm going to bypass the compressor on the channel strip. And now the EQ. So everything's bypassed on the SSL here, but what I'm going to do is turn on the EQ first so you can hear what I did on the EQ. Right? Very obvious. The EQ, a 6 dB boost, it brought out a lot more ride cymbal. It also opened up the snare drum, made it have more crack, but I got way more ride out of the deal. So it was worth the boost there. So that was the first thing I did, was just give it a little bit more EQ so that it's a little more apparent, right? Still in the mix, you don't have enough. So what we need to do is get more gain than just the fader can give me, but I don't want to just turn up everything statically, right? If I turn up the fader, the snare gets louder and the ride gets louder. I want to just mostly turn up the ride and turn up the snare just a little bit, and that's where compression helps. So on the SSL, I have a compressor. I've got the threshold at -20, which is as far down as it goes. I have a very fast attack. And I got the ratio at almost 3-to-1, but I don't really care about the numbers here. I just was dialing these in until it sounded right, and I was watching the gain reduction here and watching when it was reducing the gain. And you'll see when I bring in the compressor that it's turning down the snare drum hits. Okay, so it's compressing on the snare drum hits and not really anything other than that, which is wonderful because then the makeup gain, which this plugin does automatically, it turns up everything as you compress it, will bring up the ride cymbal. Take a listen. Very cool, right? So you notice that the ride cymbal got louder, but the snare drum didn't get much louder. You can even see the output here when I don't have the compressor in. When the snare hits, it's hitting that 15 dB mark, right? Minus 15, right between that and 10. Sometimes it's peaking at 10, but I think it's right around 15. When I bring in the compressor, the ride gets louder, but the overall peak output on the snare still is around that 15, okay? Watch it again. Right? The snare still didn't get much louder, but the ride got louder. That was what the compression is doing, keeping the snare compressed and then makeup gain, allowing everything else to come up in volume. All we've done is taken the snare, which is way up here in volume, and we've squozen it down so it's closer to the volume of the ride cymbal, and then we can bring both back up to the listener's level. And it still wasn't quite enough in the mix. It was a little bit better. Take a listen. I have a much more balanced sound, but still it's not enough gain because I didn't really turn up the overhead track. I just balanced it out with the SSL, and that's where this other compressor comes in. I took an 1176, did some more compression on the snare hits, try to tame the snare hits, but I allowed the output to be hotter so I could get more gain. So you'll see it here on the track, and you'll hear it. The whole overhead track's going to get louder, and now it's going to be back to that volume level that I needed it to be when I crank the fader, but now the ride cymbal is right up there with the snare drum hit. Take a listen. And there we have it, using compression, a little bit of EQ, but mostly compression to change the balance of the overhead track so it's more controlled so that you as a listener can hear all the parts equally, whereas maybe the drummer just wasn't really hitting the ride cymbal hard enough compared to the snare, and in the mix that just didn't work. So think about using compressors for a different reason. This might be a great way to balance out an overhead track, and you might get that sound you need in your drum mix. Hope that helps. Again, this is Graham from therecordingrevolution.com. If you haven't already downloaded the free ebook, The #1 Rule of Home Recording, then you're missing out. It's absolutely free. You can download it right this second. Click the link below the video and you can sign up for it. It'll instantly pop in your inbox and get a lot of bonus tips and tricks and a whole philosophy of how to purchase gear, how to record, how to mix, and how to get more done in your studio. You can be reading it over the Christmas holiday and come into the new year ready to rock. I've got some great stuff planned for the new year. Hang tight. January 1 is going to be fun. I've got some challenges for myself and for you. So get ready. If you want to make some music, this is the channel to be at. So subscribe and watch out for January 1. Talk to you all soon. Take care. God bless.